Tom Davis has devoted his career to Indian education, the tribal college movement, and world indigenous higher education. He began at the Menominee County Community School and played an important role in the coalition of Indian-controlled school boards. He went on to work closely with tribal college giant Verna Fowler, the founding president of the College of Menominee Nation. Tom later served at Bay Mills Community College, where he helped build one of the earliest virtual degree-granting programs in the United States. Along with TCU legends Lionel Bordeaux and Jim Shanley, he was among the leaders who signed the founding charter of the World Indigenous Nations Higher Education Consortium. If that weren't enough, Tom served as president of Lakota Ojibwe Community College and Little Priest Tribal College, as well as the provost at Navajo Technical University. But Tom is also a poet, and through all these experiences, he wrote poems to capture the magic and history unfolding before his eyes. That is Meditation on Ceremonies of Beginnings, the Tribal College and World Indigenous Nations Higher Education Consortium poems. As Anishinaabe writer and Wisconsin Poet Laureate Kimberly Blazer commented, "Read so that you may remember and carry this legacy."
I thought I'd start out a little bit by telling how this book came about, because it's sort of unusual. As we were going across the country, and sometimes out of the country, meetings, events, AHEC events usually, or even coalition events in the old days, I would tend to sit down and sometimes write on napkins, sometimes on the back of whatever happened to be there, poems. And then I just give them away. I give it to whomever I was with or whomever I wrote the poem about. And didn't think anything about it. And one day I went out to supper with Marjane Ambler and some tribal college presidents, and I wrote a poem at the table. And I wrote it on a napkin that was available because it was the only piece of paper I had anyway. Handed out to one of the tribal college presidents from North Dakota. I've even forgotten who now. And Marjane Ambler, who was sitting next, sort of kitty corner from me, looked at me with a strange look on her face, and she said, "Tom, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I wrote a poem and I gave it to whomever it was at the time." She just kept looking at me. Everybody at the table was silent. And then she, "Tom Davis, what are you doing?" At the top of her lungs. Now, Marjane's a little lady. She's not a big lady, right? And anyway, then she started lecturing me. "From now on, whenever you write a poem, you're going to tell me who you gave it to, and either you collect a copy or I'll get a copy from them." And she did that for years, literally decades. She collected the things on napkins or whatever. She'd type them up and she kept them at the Tribal College Journal. And finally, when she retired from the Tribal College Journal, she sent them to me. And then, of course, the Tribal College Press eventually decided that they ought to be published, so they put out Meditation on Ceremonies of Beginnings. So what this means is that these are sort of incidental poems. They aren't about the history of the tribal college and, where I sat down and did the research. I've written formal histories. I wrote a book called Sustaining the Forest, The People and the Spirit, which is about how the Menominee developed their forest and the science of sustainable forestry, but it's not a book like that. It was sort of what struck me at the time, or when we had time. We didn't always have time. In the early days, Cheryl, the man that Cheryl worked for quite a while, and she managed everything, of course, but we won't tell that story. But this is to Lionel Bordeaux. And this is an incident that happened in Duluth, Minnesota, a long, long, long time ago. It's all of us or none of us, he said. Face implacable, long graying hair, a big native man, black eyes shining. The president and other tribal college people looked at him, talking suddenly done, ready against better judgments to get up and follow Lionel Bordeaux, Dean of Tribal College Presidents, President of Santa Gleska University, out of the room. The Kellogg Foundation people were stunned. Eyes darted back and forth. They were too professional to look slack-jawed. But you could tell how they felt. They'd offered tens of millions of dollars. Some of the colleges were so poor they could hardly keep doors open. Competition was the American way. Weren't these tribal colleges, when all was said and done, American? The Kellogg Foundation could give millions because they made millions in the competitive marketplace. And now this big man with straggly hair was saying, it's all of us or none of us. Val Johnson, working at the Kellogg Foundation, looked at her big uncle with consternation. The boards approved the initiative, she protested. You could see from her eyes that she'd put her spirit into getting the foundation to agree. The foundation considered tribal college as a high risk. We'll have to take this back to the board, she almost wailed, though her face was calm. Dark eyes locked on her uncle's eyes. Don't get me wrong, Lionel said. We appreciate the foundation's offer. We appreciate the work all of you have done. He included the Kellogg people in the sweep of his arm. But we support each other, and no one is going to be left behind. It's all of us, or none of us. The Kellogg people looked at each other. Tribal college people looked at each other. Song of tense wind jittering maple tree leaves before a big storm was in the room. Okay then, the Kellogg Foundation people said. Okay then, the tribal college people said. And then the meeting was over as Kellogg Foundation people, wondering, went back to Battle Creek, Michigan. But what did it mean, this fire of Lionel's, this all of us and none of us? I've watched him since he was young stand up in meetings and talk history, culture, family, land, traditions, truth, and how a buffalo bull shakes a shaggy head bidden by horns. I have listened to his tribal college meetings, raged, and angry leaders declared they'd had enough. Always Lionel stood up, commanded attention, and said, Big brother's responsibility is to take care of little brother. It's all of us, or none of us. I've listened to his not quite off-color jokes, watched as he prayed a long wind as the tribal college movement swayed and tossed, and learned how to be a force in American Indian nations and the world. In the end, the Kellogg Foundation board, dressed in their three-piece suits, dresses glittering wealth, like the tribal college movement agreed. The colleges got funding, all of them. I thought I'd follow that up with a different kind of meeting in a different kind of place. We were in Mesa, Arizona. It was a Kellogg Foundation meeting. I remember the hotel sort of blew it. They brought out Post cereals for breakfast. That didn't go over well. I can't understand why, but that's what happened. And this is at a Kellogg Foundation meeting in Mesa, Arizona, after all the tribal colleges had got funding from this huge initiative that the Kellogg Foundation sponsored with the tribal colleges. He was a big man in Arizona and sincere. We were in Mesa, Arizona during winter at a meeting sponsored by the Kellogg Foundation. Tribal college presidents and administrators, students, board members, and faculty. The white man in the tailored black suit had shown up and was invited up front to speak. The foundation wanted mainstream universities and tribal colleges to work together with a common purpose. The chancellor of the university was careful and polite to begin with. But then, as if he couldn't quite help himself, he said, "You know, I really don't know what you people want." He gestured toward native eyes and faces. "I mean, the University of Arizona has developed programs and reached out to the reservation since the signing of treaties." The crowd of tribal college presidents and others didn't say anything, didn't move, didn't clap, but looked interested and polite. He clearly didn't understand what Native people needed. You remember that meeting?
These are old home kind of things.
I mean, in the early days, you know, it's sort of funny to me, but now they come onto campus and they all want a partner, right? Oh, we want to be your partner. But it took us years to train them to consult us before they partnered with us. They used to write these big grants, and they'd include a tribal college in the grants, and the tribal college would find out about it after the grant was funded. They did that over and over again. And of course, so many of the big universities opposed the tribal colleges into becoming land-grant institutions. In a lot of states, they opposed the tribal colleges from beginning in the first place. And usually when we got funding, it was so little that it was almost absurd. And to get funding was, in 1978, it was a Tribally Controlled Community Colleges Assistance Act of '78 that finally went through. But to get to that point was just a struggle. I mean, NCAI opposed the tribal colleges to begin with. I have a poem here about that. And not only, and you know, none of the congressmen or the senators would support the tribal colleges until NCAA supported us. But there was other things that went on like that, and now they want to partner with us. And we should partner with them, don't get me wrong. I mean, Navotech does all the time, and we work at it. We want more partnerships, not fewer. But anyway, I always keep in mind, especially when I'm around, what happened really, and what their president said and did.
Over the past 50 years, a constellation of great leaders has animated the tribal college movement, helping to blaze new paths, not just in American Indian higher education, but in strengthening tribal sovereignty and self-determination for all Native peoples. As with Tom's ode to Lionel Bordeaux, many of the poems found in Meditation on Ceremonies of Beginnings recount the Herculean efforts of these leaders. These final two poems offer a glimpse into the character and works of two legends who, although no longer with us, helped make the tribal college movement what it is today: Helen Maynor Scherbeck and Joe McDonald.
The first effort to organize Indian leaders into a lobbying force to take advantage of Lyndon Johnson's war on poverty programs. The Indian Education Act that gave Indian parents a voice in their children's future for the first time out of the nightmare of the boarding school. The effort to create Indian Head Start, when Head Start's founders thought tribes should be organized under geographic regions, the founding of the Coalition of Indian-Controlled School Boards and Indian-Controlled Schools movement. The Tribally Controlled Community Colleges Assistance Act of 1978 that moved the founding of tribal colleges from dream to a sustainable movement. The founding of the American Indian Higher Education Consortium, the founding of Save the Children's American Indian programs, the founding of the Lumbee Museum in North Carolina, her stint as Chief of American Indian and Alaska Natives Head Start Bureau, the founding of the National Museum of the American Indian. She passed in Maryland in a nursing home, unable to talk, unable to move in a blur, which she'd always done, even as an increasingly old woman, darting through Washington, D.C., always trying to make it and the world a better place. I used to tell the story of how Helen, when I was so young I hardly knew who I was, would call us to D.C. during the effort to get the Indian Education Act drafted and passed, and work us until 1 or 2 in the morning, and then, disgusted, when bleary-eyed we stopped making sense, telling us it was obvious we couldn't concentrate anymore and might as well go to bed. For the first hand touched Freedom's doorway, though, she'd say, "Now wait a minute," and tell us we couldn't convince congressmen of anything sleeping in bed. And tell us we couldn't, and then she'd knock on hotel room doors at 7:30 a.m. to make sure we knew our assignments, even though she lived an hour away. I used to use this story to explain how Helen Maynor Scherbeck had become one of the 20th century's most significant Indian leaders, talking her way into work at the office of Senator Sam Ervin, getting the Bible, Constitution, quoting racist, who helped bring President Richard Nixon down and became a national hero, to support the only desegregation legislation he ever supported, the Indian Civil Rights Act. And then centering herself in effort after effort to change American Indian people's relationship to the American people and government. She got her fire from her father. In 1957 and 1958, the Ku Klux Klan staged 2 cross burnings in the yards of Indians in North Carolina as a threat, and sent parades of 8 long, low sedans driving through Robeson County, home of the Lumbee, on Saturday nights. Then Klan leader James Catfish Cole, the Grand Mucky Met fire radio evangelist, planned a rally at Hayes Mill Pond near Maxton after promising the master of all Klan masters he would strengthen the Klan in North Carolina. Fearing armed resistance from the Lumbee community, local and federal officials tried to persuade Cole to hold the rally elsewhere. But Cole was a messenger of the Lord. On the night of January 18th, 1958, as Cole began to speak, the 50 Klansmen, after thousands invited, failed to show up. A Lumbee man shot out the light bulb near Cole's head, and hundreds of Indians fired weapons into the air. Klansmen fled into the dark pond and woods, although Lumbee men peacefully pushed Cole's wife out of a ditch she'd driven into in a panic. Police positioned nearby apprehended the only Klansman they could find and charged him with drunk and disorderly conduct. Later, Cole was arrested for inciting a riot. He appeared before Lacey Manor, the sole Indian judge in Robeson County. The Klan leader was convicted and sentenced to a year in prison. Ellen's father refused to let threats to him and family keep him from driving the Klan from eastern North Carolina. Even though black people were hanged, drowned, burned, and dragged behind pickup trucks as examples. The Klan had decided purity meant purity, and Indians were not white, and intermated freely with white and black men and women, so they had to be treated to the glories of God, country, burning crosses, bullets into houses late at night, and hanging ropes just like any other inferior race getting uppity around their betters. God didn't like them. Catfish hunters said so. And now Judge Maynard, Grand Dragon Catfish Cole, and even Helen Maynard Sherbeck are gone. And those of us who remember do not know how to mourn what has passed, since in our mourning we too are passing. As days and events sweep emotions and thoughts into the river of individual histories, written and unwritten, that eventually flow into terrible emptiness of loss. Helen would say she was always a bit player, trying to make it on the historical stage. A little old woman, Indian woman, North Carolina. In Washington office mazes, she took young person after young person by the hand and taught them how to work the halls of power for the good of those back home, ignoring statues, silent and judgmental with stone eyes, leaving a living legacy of leaders that one day will see flowing black hair and flashing black eyes, laughing in triumph as they remember the past while remaking the future with the glory of American Indian Renaissance. We walk through our days and wonder where time goes. We walk through our days and grow up past and remember those who have made a difference in our lives. Ellen Maynard Sherbeck passed in a nursing home. Not famous like she should have been. Her legacy inside those who knew him and learned how to be better human beings because she had been in their lives. We were in a golf cart on Salish Kootenai College's course, Joe McDonald wearing dark glasses and the determined smile he always smiles when golfing looked at me as I climbed into the passenger seat after miraculously hacking over the hazard in front of us. "You want to hear about the college's funding?" he asked, his voice as deliberate and calm as his personality. "I'm always asking founding presidents about that," I replied. Joe looked at the mountains that soared over the golf course. Snow was still on them, even though it was a warm spring day. He laughed. "Well, I was never a founding president," he said. "All I ever really wanted to be was a high school coach. And I was one around this Montana part of the world for a long time. But somewhere along the line, I got to thinking about how every native kid I knew was struggling to get through school. I got to thinking about how important higher education was to Native people. And when Flathead Valley Community College got a Title III grant designed to help with the education on the Blackfeet and Salish Kootenai reservations, I applied to work on that grant and got the job. It was after I started working at Flathead Valley that this tribal college business started. One day I got a call from the Blackfeet's tribal attorney, a Chippewa from Wisconsin. And he and the tribal business committee had heard about these tribal colleges that some of the tribes were starting. He and the business committee thought that that was a pretty good idea. The Blackfeet ought to go down that trail. He wanted our Title III project to fund the Blackfeet College by having a Flathead Valley branch campus on Blackfeet, with the understanding that the branch would evolve into a tribal college separate from the campus that formed it. I had no idea during the first conversation that other tribal colleges were using Title III that way. The problem was that all the tribes were flat broke back then. And if you wanted to start a tribal college, how could you even charge tuition to students if you were unaccredited and credits wouldn't transfer to mainstream colleges and universities? Blackfeet and other tribal people might believe they could reinvent higher education in a way that unleashed the true potential of their students and people. But who would accept that without accreditation stamped their college's courses? The truth was, I wasn't sure the Flathead Valley administrators would be thrilled with Blackfeet's idea. Why would they want to create a college that might compete with them? But after some palavering between everybody involved, the attorney and I developed a tribal charter, and Blackfeet Community College was founded. Joe got out of the cart at that point. One group, laughing at duffers sitting talking on the course, had already played through. Unlike me, Joe can really smack a golf ball, but his driver failed him, and his drive by his lake was puny. He took a mulligan so fast I hardly saw him do it. "You helped found Blackfeet and not Salish Kootenai?" I asked, as he crawled back in the cart and started driving over the course's bumps like they didn't exist. He laughed again. "I'm not always dim," he said. "When we had a tribal charter for Blackfeet down, courtesy of Blackfeet's lawyer, I took that to the tribal government here and let them convince me and Flathead Valley to do the same thing. So, working for a non-Indian college where I wasn't a high school coach, I had a role in helping to found two tribal colleges, although I wasn't the founding president of either one of them." "But you've been president of Salish Kootenai forever," I protested. That's the way it goes, he said, his voice thoughtful. You never know the future until the future's here. I didn't become president until later. The Salish Kootenai College Board hired Mike O'Donnell as the first president. Then Jerry Slater was acting president for a year while I went to the University of Montana to earn my doctorate. I didn't become a tribal college president until 1978. All the classes were still held in trailer homes back then. We certainly didn't have a golf course for the students and community. You still founded 2 tribal colleges, I insisted. Helped found 2, he admonished me. Anybody who says they founded anything as significant as a tribal college isn't telling the truth. It takes a whole lot of people working together to make a tribal college happen. He got out of the cart and took his driver out of his bag and stopped and looked at me. The story isn't over either, he said. The problems and challenges with Salish and tribal colleges as a whole sometimes seem bigger than these mountains here. He pointed at slopes and peaks gleaming in early morning light. But I got to believe, he continued, if we keep hitting the ball, one of these days we're all going to score really, really big for all Indian people. He teed up his ball and sent it sailing, arching high into Montana's blue sky.
And